Hi, welcome to another episode of the Reinvention Show. We are really excited you're here. Please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from so we can welcome you. My name is Sherry Sutton, and I have the honor of being the co-host with Dr. Nadia Zigambaeva of the Reinvention Show. So I'm super excited to be joining you here today. I'm in Tampa, Florida, and we're having a bright, sunny day here. So it's very nice to be here. The Reinvention Show, for anybody who's new, this is a place where we come together on Thursdays to share how we live in today's disruptive and uncertain world. And so we're learning tools and techniques to not only survive, but to thrive in the constant disruption. So this is a place where we share our best practices. You'll hear us ask tough questions. We'll share epic fails, and we'll bring some amazing guests. And today's guest is very amazing, and I'm really excited to bring him here to share with us. And so I'll bring him up here right now as I'm introducing him. But Duncan McLaughlin was in my cohort. I met him when we were becoming certified reinvention practitioners together, and we have kept in touch ever since. I think we talk almost every month, and had a lot of amazing conversations. And so I'm really excited to bring him and share his story with you today. And there are so many amazing things you could talk about today, but I am excited to ask you a question. So before I ask you, Duncan, do you want to say hi? And is there anything you want to add to your introduction?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much, Sherry. It's a delight to be with you again, and welcome to everyone who's joining or seeing and watching this in replay as well. It's Pride Month. We're recording this in June, so a shout out to all my LGBTQ plus folk and their allies, and also to any young people, because we're going to be talking about sustainability. And many young people feel like the adults have left the room. So if you're a younger person and you've inherited the mess that we've created, especially welcome to you. And I hope that whatever we are able to share today, and whatever I'm able to give in terms of insights and stories and tips from this journey of applying reinvention tools to more sustainable living. I hope that I can do that. I hope I can share that with you. I hope that it's useful for you.
So I'm really excited. So let us welcome here Nafis. He's joining us from India. And I know he's really excited to hear from you, Duncan. So welcome. And the question I have for you is, you've had like this experiment that you're working on, and you were just referring to it, of sustainable living. And how did you start this experiment? And what would you share with someone who might be interested in starting an experiment like this? Like, you have so much that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating history, and I'm gonna give the kind of really short Reader's Digest version. A big part of it was figuring out how we really wanted to, we meaning my family, wanted to reduce our carbon footprint. So we probably all know that, we're all, in terms of governments and businesses, moving towards carbon neutral. And so our experiment and our desire as a family was to reduce our carbon footprint. And so we wanted to apply, there are other elements of sustainability I'll talk about in a second. But what we were able to do was to reduce our carbon footprint, our carbon emissions, same thing, by 90%. So that's a lot, obviously. And I'm happy to talk about how we did that, and what the challenges were and what we learned. But in case someone is just, I want to mention a tool which is super helpful, because it's an all-in-one. It's an app. It's earthhero.org. You can go there. I did a lot of searching different tools online, and some of them are good and some of them aren't. It's really a bit of a mess. And so what I loved about this app was that not only was it accurate and science-based, but it also provides tips and training and allows you to measure your progress. It's like a health app for sustainable living, and particularly around focusing on carbon, and it's fantastic. So I just want to leave everybody with that in case for some reason they can't stay or don't want to stay. Earthhero.org.
And so 90% sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
What would be a good goal for someone maybe who was just starting with the Earth Hero app? Does it help with that?
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation, if we're trying to get to carbon neutral, all of us as individuals, as well as companies, and then we need some kind of plan. We need to have targets. We need to be able to understand how our living impacts the environment. And so I'm a lover of Mother Earth. I'm a lover of all things that live. So everything from plants to insects to animals, the web of life fascinates me. Nature fascinates me, and we are as humans making this planet unlivable. And so the way that the best thing that we can do is to reduce our it's greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint, carbon emissions, essentially the same thing. There's some other gases in there like methane, but it's mostly carbon. And so that is one big part of sustainable living. And the idea is working on a maybe 10% a year, 20%. As with any change, it's low hanging fruit first. I mean, that's how we did it by 90%, and that specifically was eliminating air travel, and because that was the lion's share of our carbon emissions, and so we decided after the shutdown and when we couldn't fly because of the pandemic. We adopted that new behavior. I went through withdrawal. I used to love to fly. I couldn't wait to get on a plane. People would look at me like, "Are you crazy?" But I love to fly, and so it was. I went through withdrawal when I couldn't fly.
Well,
and I
and
was
for
flying
people
for months.
to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but for people
No.
to really understand what that meant for you, Duncan, I wonder if you would share a little bit about the personal sacrifices that you had to make to reinvent yourself and have that commitment.
Well, I actually think that it's renouncing, and I think there's an important distinction between sacrificing something and renouncing something. Renouncing something is saying we're in trouble. We are undeniably. I mean, all the science. There's no question at this point. The question is, how do we want to respond to that? And each of us has needs to be validated in the choices they make. For us, it became really important that we did what we could and felt that we were coming from. We have a lot of privilege, and we felt like there are a lot of people that can never fly. So we wanted to do what we could, and that meant difficult decisions around not being able to visit family. So I have a very far-flung family, and parents who are in the last chapter of their lives, and same thing with my partner. And so that's a tough one. Family is a tough one. It also meant not traveling for business, and opportunities there that could potentially be virtual, but may not be, and certainly business travel. So if we couldn't get there by train, then we were not flying. So that was, just to put a number to that. That was over 100 tons of carbon emissions, and 100 tons. There's 907 kilograms in each ton. So that's a lot, and that represented the vast majority of that 90% reduction. We also did a whole look at how we were living, where we were living, um, how we could live without a car, how we could uh, uh, change our food. That's another area. So we decided to stop eating meat, and all of these things are big reductions, low hanging fruit for us. Um, the priorities are different for everybody, but for us, those were the low hanging fruit. Though, and basically, it's like everything else. When we're making change, we go for the things that are the easiest to implement, and the ones that have the most return. So that's the in a nutshell, that those were the big ones.
So I love that you said it's the difference for you between renounce and sacrifice.
Yeah,
That's a great distinction. So I love that. And I want to show you that people are loving this topic. Janet said hello. She loves
I did
this
too.
topic. And Oksana says after surviving, right, 39 Celsius in Paris last weekend, she can't think of a more relevant topic. So she thanks you so much for raising it. So, why do you
Thank you.
think this topic is becoming so important for people?
Well, I think that there's as I referenced earlier, there's a whole range of feelings that people have, and we go through different states. And I want to underline this because I think that um, I think that this this idea of the difficulty that we have even in talking about it is a problem. Someone wrote me and said, I'm so frustrated because I'm trying to convince somebody, and I feel like I'm wasting my time, and I'm just, and of course, it's not about trying to convince people. It's really understanding that this this is existential for us. This is the end of life as we know it. This is nothing less than we are creating these events that are unpredictable, and multiple layers of chaos, and everything that we're experiencing, like the heat wave in Paris last week, or like the drought in the Western United States, or the flood, or the hurricane, or the famine, or the deterioration of the soil because of industrial farming, or the et cetera. It's I see everything, every issue, inequality, racism, poverty, war, famine, everything uh, for me is rooted in how we interact with the planet. And so that's why I think that it is becoming more and more obvious to all of us, because we know someone who's had the trauma of a catastrophic event, like they lost their home in a fire, or they got flooded, or something like that. So it's getting closer and closer, and it's all around us. We just open any media. I mean, there's another report. There's another, and it's all dire. It's all it all feels like bad news, and so I think that applying reinvention, the ways in which we foster and create sustainability, which is one of the things that reinvention is about, is a perfect fit for the crises that we face, the poly crises, the interconnected. This is all about intersectionality. This is all about where things meet, right? So we have, if we talk about people of color, Black people, brown people, people of color, in the United States, that they are disproportionately affected by climate change. If we talk about, every single issue, we can look at the destruction of the planet, the extraction capitalism model, the linear model, as being a root cause.
So, feeling the heaviness of that, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about how you've used your reinvention skills or your reinvention mindset to really help you focus on making some changes for where you feel like you can create impact or make the right decision for you.
Right. And so what's really important is to understand that the different things that we're feeling can make us feel like we can't do anything, that we're powerless somehow, that we may as well just, I mean, nihilism, we may as well just enjoy it, or I want to do something, but I don't know how, to refer to what you were saying earlier, Sherry. And so I think that we need to honor how we're feeling, and we need to honor that in everyone else, because this change is so difficult, and it's also an opportunity to work on the inner ecosystem, the inner ecology. So the mindfulness, the things that ground us, the strengths that we already have, the resilience that we already have, the things that we've gone through in our lives, because everybody has gone through difficulty and obstacles, and the obstacle is the way. The 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 destination of reinvention is the journey, and so we can choose to be spectators, or we can decide that we're going to reinvent. We can decide that there's an opportunity. We can allow for the possibility that we actually don't know. As doom and gloom as it might seem, we actually don't know what's going to happen. We actually don't know. It looks bad. It looks really bad, but we don't know. And so we can allow the possibility that there are opportunities. And that's, of course, what folks are doing in tech and startup. And there's all kinds of innovation that's happening, and some of that is scaling, and there's momentum building. And so I think that reinvention provides a mindset, first of all, and then tools that we can apply to reinvention, and we can take action about the things that we really care about, the things that are really important to us.
So Dominique is sharing some great things in the chat. He said, let's start with food consumption and our way of generating energy. And so you've talked a little bit about food. And so I wonder if you could share a little bit about that.
Food. Food's a great topic, for especially as in my adopted country of France, and the comments. So one thing, when you make changes, it's like, I don't know if anybody in the audience had this experience, but if you think about someone who stops drinking, or chooses to for whatever reason, it might be because they're pregnant, it might be because there's a medication, but that whole thing of negotiating social space. So the first thing is, we need to be really clear that it's because it's meaningful to us, and that's why we're making the change. And there's an enormous amount out there about, and I won't go into all of the numbers, but that if you work down from cows down to chicken, through through various mammals that man consumes, that there's enormous carbon emissions that come from agri industry, agri food, and the biggest single difference that we can make, that my family decided to make, was to stop eating meat. So it's generating electricity, which was the other one, or generating energy. Obviously, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are, what the tobacco industry used to be, the fossil fuel sector. There's no way to make fossil fuel extraction sustainable, because it's a limited resource. So that is so part of our plan in the reinvention, in the goals that we set, in the indicators that we established as a family was to reduce as much as possible any consumption of fossil fuel and its products. So that's actually quite difficult. Think about plastics, for example.
I am just so like always amazed by all of the things that you share. And so the one phrase that you said that I really liked was this inner ecology.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about how you were working on your inner ecology. And I wonder if you can share a little bit about what's worked for you to really help you and your partner. Like it sounds like it's a joint effort for your whole family to really make these changes. And so, what has helped you? I know you've used the app Earth Hero. I don't know if there's anything more that you want to share, because I know a lot of people are wondering, like, how do you know all of this? And what's a good starting point for me if I want to reinvent kind of my
Yeah.
inner ecology or my mindset around what this means? What's a good way to do that?
Well, that's a great question. So the first thing is to really get clear about what matters to each of us. What matters to you? Um, that is that I think is a starting point for any change because that's what's going to motivate us. If we care about a species at risk, or if we care about our neighbor, or if we whatever we care about our family. So we care about our kids' futures. So we start with what's important, and then there's an amazing book that was so helpful for me, Peter Kalmus, Being the Change. He wrote that in 2018, so already several years ago, but that was his family's journey and how they decided to respond to making their lives more sustainable. And it's fascinating, and there's some great videos of him and his family and him talking as well. He's a climate scientist and deciding to put it to work, put his knowledge to work. And around the inner ecology and the work that I think we need to do in terms of reflection, we need to do this about anything. It's part of our well-being, I think, whether it's mindfulness or meditation or connecting to nature, whatever it is, that we need to be able to pause. We need to be able to dig deep into what we're feeling, and we need to validate those feelings, and we need to have those feelings validated by others around us in community. And I think that if we start with those two things and then educate ourselves on what I've mentioned, the app, obviously, what is it that we want to change, and then coming up with a change plan for how we're going to do that. For us, it was helpful to focusing on the greenhouse gas emissions, the carbon footprint. It was helpful for us to set targets. So we have targets to 2025. Not sure what we're doing after that. It's 25% this year to next. So we did the big 90%. That was relatively easy. It gets more and more challenging, smaller amounts. But there is a ton of resources. There are people, organizations, groups who are all doing this around the world. So it takes a bit of connecting. There's something called climate cafes or climate crisis cafes. People can look that up. So it's important to do the inner work and then also connect with other people. Make sure that you have a place to have that validated. We talk about this in Reinvention all the time. Among professionals, we need to be in community together. We need to support each other together, and I have a great interest in being that space for other people and who knows, maybe creating something in terms of community or support within reinvention professionals or more generally. But I do think that we need to figure out a way to be engaged. And what we found happened was the more we learned, the more connected we got, because this is, in some ways, this is a spiritual crisis of disconnection, where we're disconnected from nature. We have to kind of look the other way. We know there's stuff going on, but we're not sure how to change, or it's too overwhelming. And it's just so important to do that inner work, get clear on what's really matters to each of us, and take action so that we can feel that dissonance, that internal anxiety lessen through that process. And I just think that that's absolutely important. This is not something that we can't sit on the sidelines of the planet that sustains us.
So I love all of that. And I do want to share, I know one of the things that you do is you talk and write about a lot of this on LinkedIn. And so I want to invite people to follow you on LinkedIn or connect with you, because that is part of where you share. And I want to ask you, do you think you'll be writing a book or more about your personal journey through this process?
It's quite possible. I think that there is a need for all of us to share how we're approaching this, what our struggles are, how we overcome them, and there are certainly lots of ways in which we struggled. And my commitment in terms of LinkedIn isn't just about following, is that when I post something on LinkedIn or on Facebook or Instagram, those are the three places where I'm active. And you'll find more stories there about this particular reinvention and sustainable living, and stories. There's a story currently about a little bird, and another one about a stone wall. Anyway, the thing is that I engage whoever is commenting, and so it's really about having a conversation and creating a community together.
And I'm always so inspired by the thought-provoking questions that you ask and your responses to others. So I do appreciate the way that you interact in those spaces. So we certainly invite people to join you. So we have just a couple minutes left. So I want to ask you, is there anything else that you would like to share with us, or a parting note that you would like to leave us with?
Well, I want to point out the Britt Wray has a new book out called Generation Dread and How to Find Purpose in the Climate Crisis. And this book really speaks to the question that you were asking earlier, Sherry, about inner ecology. And I really recommend exploring Britt Wray. Super, super helpful for me, changing my life. And then more about reinvention. So the Chief Reinvention Officer's Handbook, and specifically the tool that we used. If you have the book already or you're curious, page 195, it's called the Stellar Strategy Canvas. So that's what we use. That's the methodology that we're using. And it's ongoing. It's learning to love the process of reinvention, and reinvention as the journey of discovery and of wellness.
Sorry about that. I've loved that. And I've loved having you as a guest today. And so I appreciate you being on with us. People can download the free copy of the handbook if they want to see that stellar tool. But it has been such an honor to have you. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with us, Duncan.
Oh, thank you so much, Sherry. It's been a great pleasure. And I hope that there's something in all that. It just felt like a quick skip along the surface of the pond, but there's lots more there. And I hope to hear from folks who might have other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And there's a lot more comments in the chat. So after the show, maybe you could go back and see some of those comments.
Absolutely, I will.
Feedback. Well, that would be great. So Duncan and I thank you for joining us today for the Reinvention Show, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.